on where are we currently in the global map in terms of capacity, skills, technology, regulation, policy, etc. And government recently announced path-breaking policy to make sure that the whole semicon ecosystem is being developed in India. What is the big goal? What is the thought process behind it? It'll be great if you can share that, for the viewers.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. While the introductions were being done by Avinash, I was feeling whether I am a bit out of place in the conversation here. But let me assure you that I am not quite as bit a techie as you are, but I'm techie otherwise and try to understand the conversations that happen around. I am at the intersect of policy and technology, and while we have come out with the policies, the latest round of policies for semiconductor manufacturing, I'll probably try to answer some of the conversations that have happened earlier. The fact that JC talked about strong inputs from industry have been taken while framing the policies. And what Rohan was talking about, the fact that whether $10 billion is going to be sufficient, and what is the $10 billion meant for. And in fact, the other day, one of the conversations was, if government is going to stop at $10 billion, then it may as well not be doing it also, in the sense that that cannot be the be all and end all for this. So talking about the Indian context briefly, while we are looking at, I'll probably share a few few slides also for everybody's benefit, because not every day you get
absolutely fine. Yeah.
You get to meet and enjoy the company of some such august gathering. So okay, it's slightly all over the place, but yeah. So what has happened is that electronic manufacturing, I'm sure most of you have already seen this, but electronic manufacturing has grown from $29 billion to $76 billion at 17% CAGR in last 5 years in India. And our imports, there is a definite trend in imports also, in the sense that the finished products imports are coming down. In fact, mobile phone exports are virtually less than, it's around $300–400 million. But the components imports have been increasing, and we expect them to essentially electronics to become the biggest import item in 2 to 3 years, more than oil. And the other part is that our exports also have been increasing steadily. Now, and obviously mobile devices have been the biggest growth segment, almost 10 times growth, from $3 billion to $30 billion of manufacturing happening in India. Now, what qualifies to be the manufacturing? Is it bare assembly that is happening, or has it moved to some kind of value addition? Is another discussion. But I can assure you that if we look at mobile and we look at the fact that it has moved to CKD level, and then if we look at 15 sub-assemblies also, so lots of sub-assemblies are also happening in the country. And the fact that big Indian players are also getting excited about it. The fact that Tata put a plant for enclosures and precision mechanics and precision parts, Vedanta has made those whatever announcements that they have done. Similarly, lots of other groups also. And we are looking at, we look at the roadmap to $300 billion for 2025-26. We are looking at a growth of 27% to 28% CAGR beyond and at a higher base. And again, we are betting on mobile phones and IT hardware to be important growth segments, but not to forget the other policy support that has come in the other segments also. I heard Venu talk about, or probably one of the other gentlemen, in fact, the initial speaker, talk about the fact that lot of growth is going to come because of EVs, because of renewables, and so on and so forth. So while there has been schemes, there was 1.5 years back, $7 billion support that came for PLI schemes for mobile phones and IT hardware, which was last year, and then also for components. The capex linked incentives were announced, and we see now lots of passive device manufacturing coming to India. Hopefully, printed circuit boards also coming to India. And actives also, some companies are showing interest. Components are difficult to move, to displace. But we hope that in the discrete segment also things will move. Electronic manufacturing clusters, 19 of them are already there. There are other big clusters which are taking shape. And these are high-tech clusters that we are talking about with plug-and-play infrastructure. The recent announcement of $10 billion around some of these things, and I'll briefly talk about them also in a little more detail for fabs and for design. But apart from that, the fact that electronic content is increasing in everything else also. JC talked about how we are probably going to see more and more chips per person, per capita usage also. So whether it is the battery storage segment for EVs and for automobile, the ECUs and the auto components, similarly for telecom and networking, the renewables and also the white goods, another $13 billion has been given. And this is also largely electronics oriented. So what we are looking at is $30 billion of fiscal support, which is essentially in a way leading to cascading of incentive on incentives. So unabashedly trying to support the system in the sense that companies who are making electronic components get manufacturing, manufacturing electronic components get supported through a production incentive as well as capex incentive, which is capital investment incentive of 25% of capital investment being given back, investment on building, clean rooms, machinery, plants, R&D, TOT. Similarly, the semiconductor policies, and then these companies in turn supply to sub-assembly companies, the ones which do, say, camera modules, display assemblies, mechanics, cables, they get supported separately. And then the sub-assembly suppliers and the component suppliers, they supply to the finished goods players. And these also get separately incentivized through production and incentive schemes. And this is all Government of India schemes. On top of that, we have state government schemes also. And the other fact that there are duty exemptions and revenue foregone. All of this put together, actually, so there is a method to doing this in terms of looking at disabilities vis-a-vis competing economies. What does China do better than us? Or what is the percentage of disability in manufacturing in India vis-a-vis a China or a Vietnam? And China is aspirational. What we probably are looking at is China +1 in the product segment and becoming that +1. And ensuring that people look at India before they look at Vietnam or they look at the other East Asian economies and probably now Mexico and Brazil also. So having said that, I'll probably skip some of this. The program for development of semiconductors that has come has essentially 4 different, in fact, 5 different components: semiconductor fabs, display fabs, the compound semiconductors, including gallium nitride, silicon carbide as prime specialty semiconductors, and support for semiconductor packaging OSAT also, and then semiconductor design linked incentive scheme and modernization of SEL. So Venu was talking about what nodes and what needs should India appropriate for itself. So while we look at our strategic needs being met through SEL, but that also becoming a commercial fab. For semiconductor fabs, 50% of project support has been made available for a 28 nanometer or lower node size fab at 12-inch wafer size and with capacities of 40,000 wafers per month. When talking about 28 to 45 nanometers, it is up to 40% of project support, and 45 to 65 nanometers up to 30%, and below 65, 25% of project support being made available. And we have opened the scheme for applications. We are looking at 2 companies, not beneficiaries really, 2 partners to become a part of this this initial phase of push that has been provided. And we are having some good discussions with companies, some of which, so I would not probably name the companies, yes. Similarly, for display fabs also, we are looking at 2 companies to participate in the initial round of applications. And for that, we are looking at TFT LCDs, Generation 8 and above. For AMOLED, we are looking at Generation 6 and above. And again, 50% of project cost is available as support. And the support can be in form of equity, debt, grant. So everything is on the table. And the fact that there's an India Semiconductor Mission that has been formed as a dedicated institution to drive this strategy. And while the immediate task at hand is to implement the schemes for the next 2 to 4 years, and also being an independent autonomous institution to be able to take decisions and give approvals for at least for the compound semiconductor scheme and the packaging scheme. But for the bigger schemes, the semiconductor and the display scheme, it will be negotiating with the applicants, putting the financial structure, the technology that should be taken, the kind of R&D support that should be provided. So it works as a go between and negotiates with the companies and puts to Union Cabinet for approval, for final approval for the semiconductor fabs and the display fabs. But it is also going to drive the long-term strategy. So there's $10 billion with sustained engagement. And I can say with some degree of confidence, there's great appetite in government, driven by the highest level, that this $10 billion is the starting point. Let us engage continuously with the ecosystem, partner with the state governments also, and enable and make India a bigger player in this. Now, what is the definition of bigger player? Before that, let me talk briefly about compound semiconductors also, where up to 30% of CapEx support is available for compound semiconductors and also for optoelectronics and for MEMS and sensors. And similarly for semiconductor packaging also, ATMP OSAT, again 30% of CapEx support is available. So the semiconductor fab scheme, the display fab scheme, and the compound semiconductors and packaging is available for companies across the world. The design linked incentive scheme is available only for domestic companies, startups, and MSMEs. We are again collaborating with incubators such as Safal and let us say FAPSI, the other incubator at IIT Hyderabad. But where 50% of eligible expenditure will be reimbursed by Government of India. This eligible expenditure includes costs for manpower and also costs for EDA tools for prototyping and so on and so forth. There's a national EDA grid being put in place. Some of you are involved in that, which will also have IP core repository and provide support for prototyping and post-silicon validation. Apart from that, talked about 20,000 engineers in the country, and then appetite for engineers probably, while there is a lot of design that happens in India, but the IP resides elsewhere. So we are looking at promoting Indian design and IP also. And for Indian companies which have successful products, for example, a LED driver IC, or let us say a power management IC, or an analog driver IC, or whatever designs are available, and we will do some kind of market aggregation, some kind of securement of market through a trusted value chain, or through invoking strategic needs, or through different policy measures that we have at our disposal, and try to aggregate market for Indian designs. And when they get deployed, 6 to 4% of deployment linked incentive also will be made available. So on the revenues that you get in terms of your designs getting deployed, your chips getting deployed, you'll get 6 to 4% of revenue for that also. So this is what has been thought about largely as of now. But now whether too many things are being attended at the same time, whether we should be concentrating on one or one at the cost of other, I believe these are the questions for us to answer, and that is where we seek wise counsel also. So for each of the schemes, we are looking at very strong working groups also, or essentially task forces, which can guide the efforts as they move along. The other question probably we need to answer is whether the demand which is there today, by the time another 4 or 5 years when the India fab takes shape, whether it will be because of the cyclical nature of the industry, whether it will be sustainable. You cannot be burning money in a fab, definitely. It's not a hobby. It has to be something which is very commercially driven, and otherwise. So whether there'll be any crowding out also because of lots of investments coming out across the globe, and whether the fab has to be globally competitive, it has to be export driven, but whether the domestic demand also cannot be, to my mind at least, cannot be the only pillar for sustaining the fab. So these are things we will be looking forward to finding answers to, which are the applications we should be driving. Again, we are not looking at sub 10 nanometers as of now, looking at strategic applications, but also looking at um, wherever we get good. So to our understanding and with the information from people like you, if we get strong Indian brands or global brands also making in India, which control the supply chain, influence them, and then keep the Indian fab also populated, Indian fabs populated is the other thing. So we, through this, I'm using this as an advocacy forum also to probably talk about our initiatives and also engage with you at an individual level, seek your inputs, and probably have a more organized interaction in terms of the working groups that are going to come for the each of the schemes also. Hopefully, get some of you excited to become a part of that. Thank you so much.
Saurabh, while you showed the 10 billion worth of a roadmap, there was some talk about 1.7 lakh crores worth of private investment. Where is that fitting?
1.7 lakh crores worth of?
Some private investments worth of.
Okay, so the way we are looking at it is, if we are looking at 50% of project support being given, okay, and it is not that Government of India is making the fab, but 50% of project support for 76,000 crores becomes almost double of that is the investment that is going to come through as part of only the semiconductor fabs. Apart from that, semiconductor and display fab ecosystem. Apart from that, we are hopefully some of these things probably you will see some of other things happening in the budget also, and we are quite excited about the budget that will come through. But we are looking at a very strong technology fund or a technology vertical coming through in the budget to attract private investment. But we are also hopeful is that as part of National Infrastructure Fund or probably a derivative of the funds, also a strong technology fund also taking shape in very short period of time to be able to attract global capital, act as fund of funds, and be able to leverage funding that is available or private investment that is available. So that is how that is working out, but I would be happy to get into greater discussion with you as part of that.
I think Saurabh, I can assure you that as we speak to other companies, there is certainly excitement around the policy and the forward-looking policy government has come out with. And to your point on especially the ISM, I think the idea of co-opting experts to help run it and making sure that they take center stage is beautiful, wonderful. I hear a lot, see a lot of hands. JC, you want to start on continuing from Saurabh?
Yeah, Sandeep, I see some new people who have not spoken. So let's start with them and then I will pitch it.
So let me, Senthil, you want to go first?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting and giving all the experts, bringing all the experts in this forum. I have one question to Mr. Saurabh. Hello, Saurabh. We were about to meet 3-4 weeks before at IMEC. You couldn't make it. I have a question related to the fab. I understand that India cannot be a key player as of now, and also we cannot enter into less than 28 nanometer technology. That's to be blunt, but that's the reality, most realistic fact. But strategically, we might need a 28 nanometer technology. But there is also other governments like EU is planning to invest a big, huge money in that aspect. US is also thinking. But when it comes to the fab, it's a private players, less than 28 nanometer and so on. So is there any plan to collaborate with EU or US for strategic applications, which I wrote I made a proposal sometime back. I submitted to PMO and also Indian Embassy in Brussels to Ashok, you might be knowing. When we could collaborate with Russia for BrahMos, and the project is very successful strategically, why not for semiconductor? That's my question.
Yeah, so that's a great one. There are certain G2G and other track involvements that are already happening. So while I am involved with the business side of it, in the sense that how do you get businesses, and it is essentially not many players around, but most of you are represented, most of the companies are represented here. How do we get enough excitement in companies such as the ones represented here to become excited about Indian story and to be able to look at setting up fabs in India? Apart from that, on the G2G front, whether it is dialogue with Taiwan or with EU or with US at multiple levels is very much, as we speak, it is going on. So I will not be able to speak much about that. The other part also is that how do we say, if we are only talking about the strategic part and essentially bringing an element of trust in our electronics, so we can as well be qualifying a fab abroad as a trusted fab. Okay, and that is an option which is very much available and which has been there's movement around that also. And let me assure you that our embassies abroad and essentially it is the NSCS office and other offices which deal with this kind of thing.